Hey everyone, today we're going to do a quick lesson over percents and decimals and how to transfer between percents and decimals. So the good news is this is so easy. Whether you like math or you're good at math, you think you're good at math or you're not good at math, this one is going to be easy for you. All right, as long as you can follow a simple pattern, I think you'll be able to get this lesson pretty easily. So then this will be a strong suit of yours in math. So let's start by talking about decimals to percents and how to change a decimal to a percent. So when you were thinking about a decimal, all right, you were thinking about a number that has a decimal point in it. And if I wanted to change that to a percent, this is all you have to remember. Anytime you are changing a decimal to a percent, you are just going to multiply by 100. And if multiplication's tough for you, there's actually a shortcut for how you do this. So if you are multiplying by 100, that's the same as moving a decimal point 2 spots to the right. So you can see here it says moving a decimal point 2 spots to the right is the same as multiplying by 100. So I want to show you how to do this here, and then I'm going to give you some problems to do on your Edpuzzle here. So let's do 4 quick examples here. So if I were to get a decimal point like 0 and 47 hundredths, okay? So I see that the decimal point right now is right here, okay? And I told you that we need to multiply this by 100 to make it a percent. So all I have to do in order to multiply by 100 is move that decimal point 2 spots over. So if I moved it over once, it would go to here. And if I moved it over twice, it's going to go to here. So all I would have to do then is put a percent at the end. So 0 and 47 hundredths is equal to 47%. Let's do the same thing for 36. I start with my decimal point here. I need to move it 1 spot, 2 spots over, add my percent sign. So 0 and 36 hundredths as a decimal is equal to 36%. Now, let's say I was given one like this. I have the decimal point here, and I see that I don't have 2 spots to work with here. Well, I know that I can always add a 0, and I'm not going to change the value of the decimal in the first place. So 0.5 or 5/10 is the same as 50 hundredths, right? Because 50 over 100 is the same as 5 over 10. So if I add that 0 there, now I have that decimal point here. I can move over 1 spot to the right, 1 spot to the right again, add my percent sign. So 0.5 or 0 and 5/10 is equal to 5%. All right, and the last one we were given here, I see that the decimal point's here. This one I have 3 spots that I can work with, but I'm still only going to move twice over because I'm only multiplying by 100. So if I went over twice, I go 1, 2, and I'm going to put my decimal point here. And then I'm going to add my percent on the outside. So if you ever have 3 digits, you're still always going to move it over twice, and then it's going to be a decimal point percentage. So 258 thousandths is equal to 25 decimal point, 25.8%. All right, so that is how that works out. Okay, on this next screen, you are going to try out 4 on your own. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little time to answer it, and then I will go over it. So starting with the first one, try to convert 63 hundredths, or 0 and 63 hundredths, to a percent. Okay, if you did this correctly, you should have seen that the decimal point was right here. We're moving 2 spots to the right, 1, 2, adding our percent sign, so this is equal to 63%. Try the next one, 0 and 12 hundredths. All right, if you did this one correctly, decimal point there again, I'm going 1, 2 spots over, adding my percent sign, and now I know that this is going to be equal to 12%. All right, up top here, I see another one with just 1 spot to the right. So I'm going to add my placeholder 0 here. So now I can move. So if I have my decimal point here, I'm going to go over 1 spot, 2 spots, which means that this is going to be equal to 40%. And the last one, again, I have 3 spots I can work with, but again, I'm only going to move twice. So I have the decimal point here. I'm going to go 1 spot over, 2 spots over, put my decimal point, and then have my percent. So that's going to equal to 37.1%. All right, hopefully you got all 4 of those correct. And now we're going to move into switching from percents to decimals, which is going to be pretty much the same thing. So when I'm working with percents to decimals, I'm really just going to be working backwards here. So if I have percents to decimals, here's what I need to look at. When changing a percent to a decimal, instead of multiplying by 100, I'm just dividing by 100. It's just the opposite, right? So there's also a shortcut with this one, which is great. So if I were to be given a percent, moving a decimal point 2 spots to the left now is the same as dividing by 100. So instead of going to the right, we're just going to be moving that decimal point to the left, and it will work out the exact same way, which will be super nice here. So let's do some examples together, and then I will have you try 4 more on your own. So first, we have 83%. So this time they do not give us a decimal, this time they give us a percent. So I know that if this was a percent, this is going to be the same as 83.0. So I'm always going to put that decimal point right here. So right after the whole number. So if I'm going to the left now 2 spots, I'm starting here, I'm going 1, 2 spots over, adding my decimal point and a 0. That's all you have to do. So I know that 83% is equal to 0 and 83 hundredths. The next one, we have 35%. Remember, we have our decimal point right here after the 5 because this is a whole number. I'm going 1, 2 spots over, decimal point, and a 0 again. So 35% is equal to 0 and 35 hundredths. All right, one more with 2 digits. I have a decimal point here again. I'm going 1, 2 spots over, putting my decimal point there, adding my 0. So now I have 0 and 95 hundredths is equal to 95%. Now let's say I only have 1 digit, right? So I know my decimal point is still here right before that percent sign, but I still have to move 2 spots over to the left, right? Well, the same thing works with our zeros. I can throw in a 0 right here in front of the 2 and not really change the value of 2%, right? So if I go over 2 spots now, add my decimal point, 2% is the same as 0 and 2 hundredths. Okay? So that placeholder value, placeholder 0 is still going to work for percents to decimals as well. All right, now that we've done some examples together, let's try 4 on our own. First one you're going to try is 17%. All right, if you did this correctly, remember we start with our decimal point here, right before the percent sign. I'm going 1 spot over, 2 spots over, adding my decimal point, throwing on a 0. So 17% is equal to 0 and 17 hundredths. All right, try 41%. All right, again, decimal point starts here. We're going left 1, left 2, adding my decimal point there, and adding my 0. So 41% is equal to 0 and 41 hundredths. 55% is going to be the same thing. All right, you should have started with your decimal point here. Go left 2 spaces, 1, 2. Throw on the decimal point in front of the 5, and add our 0 there. All right, this last one, remember there's only 1 digit, so we're going to have to add that 0 in here. So go ahead and complete that last one for 9%. Okay, remember, decimal point always starts here, but I don't have 2 spots that I can move. I only have 1 spot right now. So I need to add a 0 so that I can move that second spot right here. Okay, so add that 0 in. So now I should have 0 and 0.09, which is equal to 0 and 9 hundredths. Okay, up here, by the way, for the 55 or 55%, that should have been 0 and 55 hundredths, by the way, if you didn't catch that joke. Okay, so hopefully you're following along with all of these and remembering all of our shortcuts and tricks that are going to help us with decimals and percents. To me, this is the easiest part of the chapter, and if you're struggling with it, just let me know, and I think we'll be able to clarify things pretty quickly. All right, so as a quick recap, this is very important. Our top 3 things here. When we're working with decimals to percents, to convert a decimal to a percent, you just have to multiply by 100. When you're working with percents to decimals, the opposite. To convert a percent to a decimal, you just have to divide by 100, so the opposite. And then the last thing, don't forget about the shortcut. Moving a decimal point 2 spots to the right or 2 spots to the left is the same as multiplying or dividing by that number by 100. Okay, so don't forget about that shortcut there. All right, if you guys have any questions, make sure you email me, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.